Good morning, beautiful people. So before we get started, a note of clarity. From now until somewhere around mid-February, you may hear me use the term flock. I have not gone to a mentality where I am the shepherd. I am simply acknowledging that there's a subset of individuals in our community that may from time to time come dressed differently than many of us expect, or may leave early as they are part of a flock. And sometimes they need to get to the aviary in Baltimore where the ravens throw a pigskin back and forth. And I honor the flock. Even as a childhood fan of that other team. Yes, I grew up with my Charlie Taylor uniform glued to the TV every Sunday. It was a thing. When you grow up in Leesburg, that's just kind of what happens. So, there you go. Let's take a breath together. Love on a spectrum. This has been a really interesting time navigating this talk. First of all, as having a career working in group homes that serve autistic persons, I had to navigate getting a different brain set around the word spectrum, because every time I read the title and sat with it, all my brain kept doing was accessing different programs to serve autistic persons. I'm like, that's not what this is about. Please stop. And as a female-to-male transgender man, in the slides, right, I have a frame of reference that says this is about the LGBTQIA plus community. And is it really just about that? No. And yet, living in a country where right now there is a ramping up of activity that is anti-LGBTQIA plus. Right now, particularly the transgender community, right now there are over 500 legislative actions in process to literally eliminate the identity of transgender people from the United States. It's an interesting thing. And yet love is right there. And how do we get there? And what I want to share with you is, as one of those people that is in the crosshairs, we really can understand that we live in a world of condition and still know that love is fully present. We can do that. It takes a little work. I recently worked on a project, and I have a long history as a substance abuse specialist. And so it's not stuff that I didn't already know, but refresher. And it was a summit, particularly one section was focused on substance use disorder issues in the LGBTQIA plus community. And one of the things that was so hard to remember as I read it was, with people of color, as hard as things are right now for them as LGBTQIA people, the thing that they navigate that scares them the most is that they wake up and go to sleep afraid of whether or not they're going to survive in this country because of the color of their skin. That is far more challenging for them than these other things. I will never have a clear understanding of what that's like. Never. Because I don't have that experience. I have an offshoot of that experience being married to a woman that has brown skin, but I don't have her experience. And so love on a spectrum. Right? Will we find love? Will we know that it exists beyond any reprehensible behavior that humanity is capable of engaging in? Will we know that love is right there? The other piece of it that comes to me is, am I willing to let you love however you choose to love? Right? Because all the pushback, let's be real, because I have a tendency to do that. Those of you that are visiting, welcome. I'm not your typical minister. I'm all about telling the truth. And the truth is, we create all kinds of excuses and reasons to oppress one another because we think our position, our presentation, our beingness is the end-all be-all. And if you are one of those people, I invite you to do some exercises, some physical exercises, to literally spend some time leaning over and reaching for the floor until you hear, yes, I did that. Because that's when we wake up. Get your head out of the proverbial dark space that it is in that lets you believe that. God didn't create humanity in your image. Yes. And quit creating God in your image. Because there is nothing loving about that. When we think of a spectrum, we tend to limit it to the continuum, right? Spectrum is just an expression on a continuum. And when we think about a continuum, we tend to put it in a straight line. Stop it. God is bigger than a straight line. If you're familiar with the story of Indra's net is perhaps the most beautiful story of a spectrum. Indra's net is the mythology that all of creation is just one big, huge connected net. And at every point of connection is a jewel, and that would be you. That would be me. That would be each of us. And in that net, every jewel reflects the beauty and the magnificence of every other jewel in the whole net. What a beautiful concept. That is the love on a spectrum that I want to experience. That is love on a spectrum that I invite you to consider. And to know that it's our internal dialogue that's creating the problem. Jamie gave me a sticker this morning that couldn't be more true. That over time I've come to understand that, and this is not a direct quote, but that I am relying on an unreliable narrator. that we are relying on an unreliable narrator, that voice in our head that has hundreds of years of human conditioning is narrating brand new experience with hundreds of years of distorted information. It's not reliable. It's not. Which is why it feels so conflictual when it happens. For any of us to presuppose that in all of humanity, in all of the infinite expressions of diversity and creation, there's one right way to love? Huh? It hurts my brain to even try to make sense out of that. Right? It presupposes there's two puzzle pieces That's it. Now what's interesting is the binary perspective goes really deep. Our whole computer system is built on a binary perspective. What's interesting to me is that the binary perspective that we talk about with computers is in total denial about the spectrum that the binary operates on. Because while it's two ones and zeros, that's it. It's the series of ones and zeros. It's the infinite number of how ones and zeros are put together that make your computer work. It's not a simple two figures. Right? So even when we talk about it, we create our own sense of denial about what's really happening. We created the lie that there's two genders. There's two biological sexes. Biology did that, and even that has variance. Just so you know. Even the XY chromosome has anomalies and variance. So nothing in this realm is cut and dried. But isn't it interesting how our thinking goes there? And it's not just our thinking about one another. It's not just our thinking about different social issues. It's binary thinking, period. It's good, bad, right, wrong, up, down, more or less. I will share with you an example, a fresh, real, happening any moment, was happening, might happen again in a minute, and give you some tools. So I'm working on some new projects. And while I know I have certain subject matter expertise, and I know I write well, and I know I'm intelligent, and even if I didn't know it, I've got tons of evidence to support it, this thing is new. And so I'm watching my inner dialogue, and I'm moving along, doing this thing that I'm doing, and then I'm finding that I've been staring at the computer screen for 20 minutes. My fingers have not moved to generate this report that I committed to generating because I'm distracted by my binary thinking that all of a sudden says, I really suck. I don't know how to do this. Maybe I never knew how to do it. I'm more of an idiot than I ever owned. Right? Please join me in laughter because it's ridiculous. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I'm not the only one in the room with this dialogue. Right? And then I go to the other end of the spectrum that, well, it's not true. I'm absolutely brilliant. And the problem is not me, it's the people reading the reports. I have it all together. Right? Because we do that. We go to this end or this end. And the hardest thing for us to do as human beings is to live in the fluidity of the middle. Right? Because we have this ancient lizard in our neck called the amygdala. Okay? And that's really what it is. It is an ancestral, ancient little lizard brain. And it holds so much misinformation that the cortex is often overpowered by the amygdala. Because the cortex processes. The cortex has enough sense to process and to be objective and to help us develop skills to navigate this stuff. And sometimes that beautiful process is overwhelmed by the antiquity of the lizard. It has more experience, I will say that. And so maybe that's where it gets its strength from, is experience. And We don't have to give our power to it. So how do we not do that? Well, for starters, we tell ourselves the truth. And even before that, I offer you this as a divine interrupter. Ain't a word of truth in it. When you catch yourself in that internal dialogue, it is, in my experience, completely ineffective to argue with it. Because it's been arguing for its case way longer than I've been arguing against it. And so to simply interrupt it, ain't a word of truth in it. And then remind ourselves of the spiritual truth of our being. And sometimes I have to close my eyes to do that. And I don't close my eyes to get anywhere. I close my eyes so that I'm not distracted by the world of condition around me. And it allows me to be focused on the truth of me. Which is also the truth of you. That we are each a one-of-a-kind, intentionally created, divine idea in the mind of some infinite beingness that we can't even define, much less fully understand. That it wants to experience and expand itself as life so intentionally as you that it created you out of itself and left you alone to discover that you are it in form. That's who you are. And when we can just sit with that idea, all the storm in the head starts to calm. And then it doesn't matter anymore. Doesn't matter whether I'm good or bad. Doesn't matter whether I'm right or wrong. Suddenly, I'm empowered to continue. I'm empowered to be in integrity. I'm empowered to laugh at myself and to laugh with myself. And to be loving with myself. And so, the thing I want to offer you most this morning is that love, just like life, happens on a spectrum. It just does. It's not even up for debate. Life, love, is on a spectrum. And the invitation is for us to be there with it. I was looking for a specific quote that I still haven't found. But what I did find was one that landed quite magically. Check this out. This is from page 297, Attracting Friends, which I think is quite perfect for spiritual community. In order to have friendship, this enduring friendship, true, really worthwhile, and a thing of beauty, we should cultivate an attitude of friendship toward everybody and everything. The one who has learned to love all people will find plenty of people who will return that love. This is not mere sentiment. It is more than a religious attitude of mind. It is a deep scientific fact, and one to which we should pay attention. The reason is this: as all is mind, and as we attract to us what we first become, until we learn to love, we are not sending out love vibrations, and not until we send out those vibrations can we receive love in return. If you want it, become it. I love you. Let's take this into prayer. And so as I breathe, I recognize that it is God, Spirit, Buddha, Allah, whatever name I know it by in this moment, I call it love, is breathing me. Created out of it, by it, to be it. I must know it. And knowing it, I know every expression of it. That all life is this one life. And that love is everywhere present, in, through, and as its creation. That is always expressing, always available. And so I speak my word, claiming and affirming that I and all of humanity release all of the lies, all of the excuses, all of the rhetoric that is in the way of becoming the love that we seek. And knowing that law instantly responds, I know it's done. And so I let go as I celebrate the experience of stepping into the experience of love that life is. And so it is. And so take another breath with me. And I invite you to set an intention for this week. From this space, from this inward knowingness, I invite you to immediately put it into practice. To decide how you are going to show up this week as more love on the spectrum.